Hi guys, in this video I'm going to go over how to get started on your final pixel art project. So the first place to start is to choose which grid you're going to use. So we have this grid from last week that has the letters at the top and the numbers down the side, and it has bigger pixel squares. I also shared with you guys this smaller blank grid. It doesn't have those letters or numbers on it, but it does have a lot smaller squares. So with the smaller squares, you're going to get more detail in your pixel art image. So if you have if you chose a photo that has some pretty good details in there and you want to keep all of those details, I would suggest using this smaller blank grid. If you have an object that has kind of just bigger areas of color and it doesn't have a whole lot of super small fine details, you're definitely welcome to use this bigger grid that we used last week. So once you have picked your grid, we want to make sure that we go and make a copy of it. So this one right here is the shared one that it's shared with all of my people, so it has a lot of people in there. So we want to make sure that you don't do your pixel art in the shared grid. So you want to go to File, Make Copy, and then you'll just make your copy. Let's see. Just name it whatever and hit OK. So once I have the copy of the grid, now I can start putting my image on here and pixelating. So I have my own copy, so I don't have to worry about messing up the grid for anybody else. So once we have this, we're going to go and get our image. So you guys already submitted and have your images approved. I'm just going to use this one right here. And then we're going to go back to our copy and hit right click and paste, or you can do Control V. So with that, just like with our practice, it posted the photo on top of our grid. And to make our pixels, we want to push our photo to the very back behind the grid. So before you move the photo behind the grid, we want to make sure it is big enough. So my image is very, very big and it takes up most of the screen. If your image was smaller, say about this big, that's not going to be a whole lot of pixels. So we want to make sure our image is nice and big so we can give it as many details as we can. So you want to line it up to the corner here. So I have the corner of the grid and the corner of my image in the same spot. Then I'm going to go down to the corner, to the bottom right corner, and just drag and make my photo as big as the grid. So now I have to where the right side over here is the same size as the grid. You are going to have some squares down at the bottom that it just won't fit, and that's fine. We just want to make sure that it is going to be nice and big so that we can use all of those pixels to make all of our details. So now, once you have your image big enough, you want to right click and go to Order, and we want to send it to the back. So that's going to push it behind our grid right where we want it. All right, so now that we have our grid behind, our image behind the grid, we can go in and start adding the color to our pixels. So remember, you want to fill the pixel with whatever color is going to be the biggest one. So if I'm choosing one that's in the middle of this flower, it's going to be some color of pink. That's going to be the biggest color. But if I go to the edge, like this pixel right here, it's about half and half pink, half green of the background. So you need to decide what color takes up the most space. So the general rule is if it's 50% or more, choose that color. So if I look at this square, this square right here, it's going to be mostly pink with a little bit of green from the background. So I will fill this square, that one, with pink. So it's not going to have the nice curves of the edges of the flower petals or the bee exactly, it's going to be more pixely, more cubes, and that's okay. That's fine. That's exactly what we're going for. So you guys want to fill in your objects first. So I'll start with this flower and do the bee, and then I'll show you guys how to do the background. Whoops. All right. I just did a mistake here. I accidentally moved some of those squares. So I noticed in the practice that this was happening to some other people, so I want to show you guys how to fix this. So I have accidentally moved that square and it's not in line with the rest of the squares. What you can do, you can click on it if you can select it and just kind of try and move it back. And that kind of worked, but I think it just stretched it, made it big. What you want to always remember with anything you do online, there's always going to be an undo button. So the undo button in Google Drawings is at the top left, or you could also just always use Control-Z. That is going to be your best friend if you do anything. So look at that, it fixed it. So you can do Control-Z for as far back as you need it, and it fixed my other one down here too, which is great. So if you accidentally hit Control-Z one too many times, like I just went too far back and it brought the photo forward, what you can do right next to it is the redo button. So it'll just it'll fix your undo. There we go. So if you ever have something that like you accidentally drag a grid square somewhere or you mess up, don't panic. Hit Control-Z or the undo button. It'll be your best friend. So a little bit about the background. I do want you guys to fill in the background. So you might have a background like mine that is kind of simple, that doesn't have a whole lot of detail, but it does have more than one color. I want you guys to choose the main color for the background. So if I see it's mostly green with just a little bit of like dark green over here, I'll probably choose this lighter green for my background color. If you have an image that has like grass with flowers in it, you can choose to add those flowers if you want to, or you can just go with the green. So you guys get to kind of like with the edges of your object, just kind of decide what is going to be taking up the most space, what is going to be the most important color for your background. And I know that some of you guys have images that the background is just white. I do want you guys to choose a color for it. So if you have like a cartoon that has just a white background, I want you to choose some color for the background other than white. So that's just going to help us see the edges of our object. So like if the background was pink, it'd be hard to see the edges of my pink flower. So same idea, if you have a white background, just change it to whatever color. You get to decide what color you want for the white background. Alright, so now I am going to go and do a time lapse of me filling in the pixels for the flower and the bee. I will be right back to show you guys how to finish up the background. Guys, so I have gone through and I have filled in all of the main pixels for my image. So I have my flower all filled in and I have the bee all filled in. Now the last part is the background. So like I said earlier, if your background has like a bunch of different colors in it, just pick one color for the background. So with mine, it has some light green over here, some dark green, and then some black up in the corner here. I'm going to just choose one color of green to do the whole background with. Now, it might seem kind of intimidating to try and click on every single square in the background for this, but I'm going to show you a couple quick ways to make it a little bit faster for you. So before I start anything, I'm going to trim off this bottom section down here that's just empty. My image isn't in there, so I don't need those grid pieces. So what you can do, I just have my mouse here. If you go up to the top, I'm just on select. What I'm going to do is click. I get a little plus sign, and then I am going to drag over all of the squares that I don't need in the grid. And when you let go of your mouse, it'll select all of those. So again, just one more time. I'm just have my regular mouse. I'm going to left click and drag across all of the squares. Now it doesn't have to be directly on the edges, it can just be in the middle. So it's going to drag and drop and select all of those. Once you have all the ones that you want to get rid of selected, you can either hit Control X or right click on them and go up to cut. And then that gets rid of all of those that we don't need, all of those extra pieces. So now I'm going to go and fill in the background. So the first thing, I'm just going to start down at the corner here. I'm going to find my color. I'll find the right fill color. I could use one of these greens, but I've already made a whole bunch of custom colors, so why not make just one more to make it perfect? So it's kind of a yellowy green, but it's a little bit darker. It's about like that. I'm going to click off and yep, I am pretty happy with that color. So once you have the color, what you can do, we're going to just do the same thing like we did selecting and getting rid of these squares below. You are going to click and select the boxes that you want to fill in. So my suggestion, I would do big chunks that are completely open first, that you know that aren't going to be part of the flower, part of the bee, or part of your object. So you select those. Let's try it one more time because I think I got the photo selected in that one. So I'm going to try from the top this time and drag down. Okay, maybe not maybe, I have to... I might have to get rid of the photo first before it will let me fill in the background. So why don't we go ahead and do that. So to get rid of the photo in the back, we have to go and make sure that we're able to select that photo. So if you have your grid on top, you're not going to be able to find that photo and select it. So what you can do is go to one of the corners. Go to one of the corners here and click on just one square in there. You'll right click and you'll go to cut. So we've gotten rid of that square, so now we have a hole right where that square right where the square was at the corner, where if we click, it'll select our photo. So that's how you get to the photo in the background to get rid of it. And so once I have my photo selected, again, I just went back to that corner. I did the top left corner up here. And if I click there, there's no longer a grid square, so it goes and clicks directly on your photo. So you will right click and go to cut. So that is where we're going to see some holes, like if I forgot to fill in part of the center here and just didn't see it because it blended in with the photo, this is where you'll be able to see that. And this is also where if you had white, like my wings over here, they're very, very light gray. So it's kind of hard to see what is white versus the light gray. And if your image does have like white at the edges, like if you did a white cat or a white flower or something that has white as part of your object, it's going to be very difficult for you to be able to see the background versus the white. So if you want to make it a little bit easier on yourself, if you go back to this undo button or hit Control Z, it'll re-put your photo up there. And what you can do is go around your areas that are hard to see once you get rid of the photo, just so that you kind of have an outline of them, so you'll know what's background and what is your object. So I'm just going to do this real quick, just so I can have a better idea of where to stop for the background and where the wings start. Alright, so that's for the most part. So now let's see, when I go back up to my top left corner up here, click on it, still selected the photo, right-clicking, cut. Alright, so it's easier to see where my outlines of my wings are, and I can just go in and fill in the rest of them by hand, one at a time. So we can see all the way around them. Alright, so now that I know where my wings are, and I can see everything else, now let's see if it'll let us select and fill all of them. So I'm just taking, dragging, I'm gonna select all those. Yep, now it's gonna do it. So now I'm just gonna go back up to fill color, go down to the color I want, and boom! We have a nice big section already filled in. We didn't have to do it all by hand. So that is very nice. So you want to do that for the other big sections, but you want to be careful that you don't accidentally get part of your image, like part of the object that you spent so long turning into pixels, turned into the background color. So if I go over here on the left side, and let's say I accidentally dragged it too far, and now I have part of my flower selected, and I didn't want that. What you can do is just simply click off, or if you selected it and you didn't realize that you had part of your object selected and you went in and just filled it in, you're like, uh-oh, what do I do now? Well, we have our friend the undo button, Control Z. That'll take the color away, so where you just have it selected, and then you can fix the space that you selected so that you're not clicking and filling up your object. There we go. So now, if I go up to the top left corner here, I have that space where we deleted the square so that we could delete the photo. So now, I don't want just a corner missing, so what you can do is click on one of the squares, right click, hit copy or Control C. I would click off so you're not selecting that, and then if you right click again, you can go to paste or Control V. And so now we're just going to have a floating square, so you want to carefully click on it and then drag and drop back to the corner. So now we don't have that missing corner anymore. So now I'm going to go in and try and fill in as many of the big areas as I can without hitting or covering up the bee or the flower. So you can get pretty close with a lot of these, and it's going to be a lot faster to fill it in this way. But once I get around the outline of my flower here, for the little squares that I have on the inside, I probably will have to go and fill those in by hand. There's just not a super easy way to do those other than just going in one by one. And another tip that I wanted to share with you guys that's going to make it go by a little bit faster. If you go back and look at the time lapse, you'll notice that when I was filling in this yellow part of the flower, that middle part, it looked like I was just selecting it all and then filling it in, and that's exactly what I was doing. So what you can do, if you have a big space that you know is going to be just one color, like the yellow of this flower here, what you can do is if you click on one square, I'll just do it in the background, click on one square, have that selected. If you hit your shift button, just push and hold, so I'm still holding, you can click on other squares and it's going to select them too. So whatever squares you want to be filled with that same color, you just want to hold shift and it will select all of those. And so now that I have them all selected, I'm going to take my finger off of the shift button and go to the fill. and it will fill in all the ones that you selected. So that is really nice if you have areas that you filled out the outside of it and it's just one big area that you need to fill in, but it's not like a normal shape. So it's not going to be just something that's like a square or something that you can just fill in by using our select tool like that. It really helped with the kind of organic shape of the inside of the flower here, this yellow part, because I was able to click on exactly the ones that I wanted to turn yellow. And that helped it go by a lot faster instead of just clicking every single one, because I knew it was a big space that I wanted all the same color. So I'm just gonna quickly just try and fill in the rest of the space here of my background. So some of them you do have to just go in and fill in by hand, and that is okay. Okay, so I have, for the most part, most of my background filled in. So what you want to do once everything is completely filled and you have all of your background, you have all of your image, your whatever object that you are turning into pixels, and you have the bottom part or whatever part of the grid that you did not use deleted, or it's just the grid that you used, what we can do is now we're going to go to File, Download, and you want to download as a JPEG. That's going to be the easiest way and the quickest way to get it uploaded to Schoology, because if we download as a PDF, it just takes a bit more time because it's going to be a bigger file. So you're going to download as a JPEG, just name it whatever, and then you'll submit it into the assignment. I believe it's going to be Final Pixel Art Project, and that should be up when this is up.